Welcome to With Honors, the Honors College podcast. I'm Max Sandlin, and my guest today is my friend and colleague from the College of Bible, Dr. Daniel Crouch. Daniel, tell us what you do here at Harding.
Well, I just started in the College of Bible and specifically helping lead the new David E. Smith Center for Healthcare Ethics and Human Dignity. If you have any ideas for a shorter title, please let me know.
So you work with ethics, cultural studies, and particularly bioethics and technology, some of that kind of stuff, right?
Yes. So bioethics, mostly focusing on ethical issues that pop up in the healthcare industry, but I've been making posters recently to advertise it. And a big part of what I'm advertising is healthcare, but it's also technology and just science in general, and then culture, public life.
So this felt like a great opportunity to have you on the podcast so honor students can get to know you, but also because our question today touches on ethics and I think has some direct implications for a couple things you're interested in. Let's hear the question, Eliza.
How should a Christian think about engaging with a career where there is pervasive systemic injustice?
Pervasive systemic injustice. Let's start with pervasive means it's all over the place. Now you tell us what systemic means.
Systemic injustice, or am I allowed to move on to injustice as well? Systemic is that it's pervasive in a way that's not easily identifiable, that it's a part of the very system, the part of the very, might say, nature of that particular industry. So it makes it hard to sort of weed it out.
Yeah, you think about like a guy at the insurance office who charges people extra money in order to file their claims more quickly, like taking a bribe. That would be individual injustice. An insurance company that scans for diseases that are most common among the poor and then refuses to insure the poor, which means they get no health care coverage because they are poor. This feels like it's not like somebody's fault. It's the nature of the system.
It would normally be the case that there's nothing illegal about systemic injustice. That's sort of the nature of the beast. Mm-hmm. Whereas a insurance agent who's taking bribes, there's something clearly wrong here. They can be prosecuted and they can get in trouble for that. But the insurance company hasn't broken any laws in some situations. I don't know about that particularly.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, you know, the places we normally hear this is in like oppressed communities, not just individuals. So systemic racism or systemic sexism or other forms of kind of group oppression. But this is a question about like just professions in general. So I'm thinking about like, partly I want to know, what professions are you thinking about entering, Caden? There are some professions, do you think this is right? There are some professions that are not viable, legitimate moral career choices for the Christian. Some fields you're like, nah, you just can't go into that. Prostitution is the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, that's probably the
pornography, that sort of thing.
Yeah, those are two pretty prominent examples. Some Christians, this is obviously, Christians would disagree about this, but some Christians make pretty hard lines about your participation in government institutions. So that would include the military, but also public office of any sort.
Anything involved with, say, violence. Christians shouldn't go into a field where they might be called upon as part of their job to kill another person.
Yes, but it even extends to roles where you're the one in charge of that violence, in charge of coercion.
To order someone.
Yes.
To order someone to kill someone.
Yeah, so even the mayor, even though I assume, who's Cersei's mayor? I'm new here.
Matt Faulkner, a guest on this very podcast.
Oh, yeah, I'm still learning all about Cersei. That I assume Matt Faulkner isn't, he's not going to have to manhandle anyone in town. But anyways, there are other jobs.
But the police that work for him, you know, down the line might have to.
Yes.
Point. Yeah.
Someone else would have to that he's above. The other ones that immediately come to mind have a little bit, they're more lucrative careers. Something maybe, this is showing some of my cards, but careers in Wall Street. Maybe some careers in the entertainment industry that aren't explicitly pornographic, but there are other ones where you're in these systems of power that they hold a lot of influence and they get away with a lot.
Sure.
And not always getting away with illegal activities, but illegals are activities that Christians would deem, yeah, something's wrong here.
I think about even like, let's say your job is in sales and marketing, right? And the systemic evils of greed and consumerism that are pervasive in Western society. Your job as a marketing professional at a firm is to get people to want to buy the product your company sells. And let's say your company sells something that's not inherently evil, but also, does anybody really need this? You're just sort of fanning the flames of our insatiable consumeristic appetite. But really you're like, no, I just sell luxury bags for a living and I make great ads for that. And I make an ad for whatever company comes along. I think part of the point is that pervasive systematic injustice is not limited to the most flashy and obvious fields, but rather every field struggles with this because every field is filled with broken people, and the systems that we build are also broken and sinful. Like even being a college professor, rife with systematic injustice across the board.
Yes, and though I think this starts to get us at the degrees of removal from that injustice.
Yeah.
So both of us might agree that the higher education system has some major flaws that are present.
And if they just listen to us, we could fix them all, right?
I send emails to the president of Harvard every day, hasn't responded.
It's terrible.
But there are other careers, some of the first ones we said are the easy examples, like prostitution, where the degrees of removal are very few.
So great. Yeah, so great that we're like, oh, look, it's not legitimate to point out that a salesman and a prostitute are both engaged in fields with injustice because it's, as you say, the degree of removal is so great. That's true, of course.
Yes, I would think so. I have a couple of examples or stories I was thinking about. I was just having this conversation with some folks a few days ago, and I want to hear your thoughts on a career I was involved with. And are you willing to tell me if I was involved in systemic evil?
I will.
Okay.
And we'll have an invitation song. You can come forward.
I figured you'd be willing to tell me where I'd gone wrong. So, in a previous life, I worked in software. And I think it's probably notable to say I double majored in undergrad in Bible and ministry and computer science. And I went back and forth the whole time trying to think, which career am I going to go into? And I had basically decided by the time I was graduating, I'm going to go into ministry. I'm going to dedicate my life to the service of the Lord's church. And then a couple months later, found myself in a software job. How that happened, no one knows to this day. So
I'm sure the money had nothing to do with it.
Well, that was probably a big part of it. So maybe you've already called me out for my evils. I started this job, and it happened to be for a company that does the billing software for fitness clubs, their fancy word for gyms. And one of the biggest gyms that was a client for this club, I was put on the team that directly responded to that gym and all of their needs, which outranked all of the needs of all the smaller fitness clubs and gyms that we served. And I had just gotten to this job, and within a couple weeks, there was a big meeting where all of the big wigs from this gym company all flew down from New Hampshire. And you can imagine we were at a really long boardroom table, and on one side of the table was lined with all of these Arkansas schlubs, me included among those. And on the other side of the table were all of these people who worked for a gym for a living, and they were wearing like pastel sweaters, and they were all just beautiful people. It was these trolls on one side and these goddesses on the other. It was quite the contrast. But anyways.
Trolls and goddesses.
It was a 2-day meeting. I was in there the whole day. I'm new to the company, so I don't say a thing. I'm fresh out of school. But I
Plus
remember,
intimidated. Being a troll, how do you speak to the divinities? Yes.
Exactly. So at some point, I do remember, though, that my manager was standing up and was walking around and sort of pitching ideas, just trying to think of things that our company can do for this gym. And they pitched at one point, well, one thing that we could do is we can send out an automated email whenever you haven't had one of your gym members, they haven't been in a while. We'll send them an email and say, hey, we miss you. We'd love to see you soon. And before my manager had even gotten that idea out of their mouth, they were cut off by the VP of this other company, of this gym. And they said, no, please, goodness, no, don't do that. Our whole business model is that people will sign up for their gym membership and then forget that they have it. We do not want to remind them.
Right. Because then they'll cancel.
Because then they'll cancel, like, oh, right, I haven't been going for a while.
This is the mini storage model of sales.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And I just remember in this moment, I'm fresh out of school with my big dopey eyes, and I had been planning on being in ministry, and here I find myself in a situation where I was just sort of said out loud with no sense of shame that, oh, our business model is to take people's money and have them forget that they're paying us for this.
To give them nothing.
Yes, and for nothing in return. Obviously, I don't know if it's obvious, I stayed at this job for many years. And continued to work there, continued to build software. I have some more that maybe a little bit more nefarious, but I'll spare us for now. Mac. I don't work at that gym. I wasn't the one who made that decision specifically.
Right.
I worked at the software company that served that gym, and I was a lowly member on a team for that software company that served that gym. What is my level of complicity?
Yeah, I think it's some, but I tend to think this is one of the very rare cases where Immanuel Kant and I agree. I'm always like bad-mouthing Kant. But Kant has a very low view of what's called negative responsibility. That is the level of blame or praise that you receive for things that you didn't directly will. So if they had said to you, Daniel, you're the dictator now, you get to make all these decisions. Do you want to take these people's money without telling them? And you had said, yes, and twisted your mustache, then you'd be in the wrong. But actually sitting there, you thought, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And you weren't doing that, not directly. So Kant says this is a negative responsibility, your complicity in this. He says, no, you don't have, you're not morally culpable for that. I tend to have a higher view of that, in part not because of some sort of rule, like Kant has this as a very firm rule, and I don't think that way, but I do think this. Most of us, most of the time, are involved in so many things that are broken in one way or another, and we aren't even aware of it. If we start saying that we are responsible and culpable for all the evils in which we participate, the responsibility becomes overwhelming to us, and we can't do the work. Like, we only have so much bandwidth in our mind and in our lives. Like, I can only control so many things. So I have a watch on today. It's Japanese. I don't know the conditions under which this watch was produced, and I didn't think to look them up. I'm sure there was injustice in there somewhere. I have in my pocket an iPhone that is produced in China, and I happen to know, because I've done some research on this, had students do research, that there are all sort of things that I think that's not really ethical in the production of it. Environmental factors, low wages, yada, yada, yada. But I also think I didn't will any of those things. This is the world I have to live in. On the other hand, I do think, like, if your conscience begins to gnaw at you and you ignore that, or you say, it doesn't matter, the money's good here. Oh, now suddenly we've got a problem. And I think that the struggle with questions like what Caden's asking is, what we have to appeal to is something like wisdom. And what people want is, what should I do? I would like to be, the president of Russia, or I would like to be an executioner, or I would like to work in the horror film industry, or whatever it is, all these different things where you go, well, there might be some moral questions in that. tell me what to do. And I think the truth is there's not a rule. What there is the development of skills of wisdom and discernment such that a person knows, I need to get out or I need to stay. I was reading something yesterday about this. What's the name of the company, the AI company that produces Claude AI? Anthropic, right? So Anthropic has had a number of people who work for them writing code for this quit and cite ethical issues. Oh, we're worried about the way that Claude, these AIs, can be tied into national defense systems and weapon systems, or others. We're worried about how these things make moral decisions. We're worried about the way they're going to displace human jobs. And they quit for moral and ethical reasons. I don't know that I would say working in the AI field is immoral. It does seem fraught. Like, I don't know that AI's, maybe its environmental side definitely has a lot of systemic injustices in it. But like the sitting at a desk writing the software, I don't know. Writing the code, I guess I should say. But I can see where it can be. In 2 years, could this be a site of massive systemic injustice? Yeah, it could. What will you do? I kind of want to say, which company, which job, what's happening right now? Did you have to leave the United States of America during segregation, or could you just speak out against segregation? Could you still run a business that benefited from it? If you were a sharecropper, a farmer in the antebellum South, what's your responsibility given the systemic problems around? We can't escape it. The question is, where and how do we choose to enter it, and how do we respond once we're there? That's my instinct. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the possibility of escaping it. I don't know when my cultural references become dated, but this is a big point of the show The Good Place from a few years ago, is just showing how integrated every action of ours is with systems of injustice. But as far as how to respond to it, there is a part of me that thinks in these discussions that, the audience that we're speaking to is particularly younger people.
Tens of people are going to listen.
Yeah, tens of people. Or just maybe a better way of thinking about it is the people that are on the top of my mind when I'm addressing this are folks who are bright-eyed and optimistic and filled with ideals, which I think is a really lovely thing. And as much as I think there's need for change in the world, that's what we need, is people with high ideals. But there is another part of me that thinks that young people have to realize, the world is broken, and there are very few ways that I can sustain my life or to provide for a family that isn't a part of some sort of broken system. And so there's this reminder that you have responsibilities to other people that aren't yourself, and that sometimes you get asked to do things that you don't want to do. That's the nature of all relationships, is even when it's not forms of evil, it is in every relationship there are demands made of you that you don't want to do, and yet you have to. That said, I think it is you're right to point more in the direction of, we want to have some sort of moral guidance within us that's helping us discern in those situations. Your word for discernment is important here. Prudence is the other word that we might use. And concept that we come back to a lot, Mac, is the importance of virtue. Yeah. That's what's necessary here, is that it's hard to say from the outside what job is acceptable, what career, what industry you can be a part of and still be a good Christian, though I imagine the answer is pretty broad. But what seems more obvious is you will have to decide in those situations, that any individual has to make that decision, and you can only make that decision once you've developed virtue in yourself, and you have that virtue of prudence. But you also have a virtue of fortitude or courage, the ability to say, yeah, this is wrong, and I need other people to know that this is wrong. I need to be courageous for myself and for those around me.
So I think about a couple of practical things we might say as we're wrapping up here. One is, how should you respond to people who want to go into those careers or are already in those careers? I would say it's especially incumbent upon them to be cultivating wisdom intentionally and purposefully. So I would say you should be reading good books. You should be thinking about it. There's a deep temptation in all of us to ignore anything that might call us to make sacrifices, to pretend it's not there, to count it out. And I would say, pay attention and seek wisdom and develop these good habits early, especially while you're a student. And the other thing I would say is, talk to some people in the field about this exact question explicitly, and then talk to some people who aren't in the field about the question explicitly, so that you have multiple points of views going into it. Any final practical tips for acquiring these virtues we're talking about?
I'll just emphasize the last point that you made, which is talking to people in the field and people outside of the field. People in the field, obviously important because they have direct contact with whatever you're thinking about, but it's the people outside of the field that tells you, oh, this is how the community thinks about this. And that should weigh heavily on your decisions. How do my friends and family and the people I interact with every day think about this industry that I'm considering going into?
This is the problem when you ask virtue ethicists to give you practical advice. We always say something like, try to be a good person. But the truth is, that's the best advice we can give. And I think the last thing we always say, pray about these things, but prayer is the great path to wisdom. And so we'll be praying for you and thinking about you as you guys are all making these career decisions. And we look forward to hopefully this podcast and others being helpful to you as you navigate them. Thanks for being with us today. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Mac.